AI is going to not demand a declining fiat currency. It is not going to demand a form of payment that cannot be divided a billion or even a trillion times. It is not going to choose a form of payment that is not digital like itself. I see this world quite clearly coming upon us quite rapidly because I actually live this world. I lived the world and I participated in the world with 14 algorithmic trading processes of my own, which I ran for 8 years straight. I believe that digital world will start to demand Bitcoin for its processes. So imagine each AI generated process also having its own wallet. We're going to move to this world. It happened in my space. I believe it's going to happen generally in almost every single space. I put out a post earlier today talking about my belief that AI, artificial intelligence, and the entire algorithmic world, I think those two worlds are going to start competing with us, with you, for Bitcoin. And we are rapidly moving to a world where a good many of the, a good portion of the work, a good many of the activities that we literally cannot do from a human basis here. Guys, the eyes, the light is sort of bright on my eyes here. That's why the glasses are there. But I put out this post, and I believe that AI, the algorithmic world, we're rapidly moving to a world in which those two categories, we'll rely on those two categories quite extensively to do things that we simply can't do as human beings. And I saw this algorithmic takeover of financial markets, in particular the equity markets, throughout my entire career. When I first started on the street in December of 1986, I landed my first job on Wall Street as a Wall Street trader and ultimately became an institutional trader. And when I started, it was not a computerized world. It was still a very much relationship-based world where in order to get specific size, you needed to have a specific contact. If you wanted a specific price, you needed a good relationship with certain runners on the floor. You needed to occasionally take out the specialist of a specific stock out to dinner quite regularly. It was a relationship-based world. And I saw that world basically crumble before my very eyes over a relatively short period of time. I saw that world become computerized, become digitized, I saw my world move from a fractionalized world into a decimalized. Decimalization took over the markets as well. And I saw a movement that really not only exploded volume for financial markets, but basically collapsed cost for the end user of these markets by narrowing the spread. As long as human beings were actually the ones providing the liquidity, the supply, the demand, and not the algorithmic machines, not the algorithmic, and the algorithmic and networks that were specifically designed to go into the markets and trade between the spread. I just saw the cost collapse. I witnessed the spreads collapse. Obviously, the spread is almost equivalent to the cost, so the spread and the costs collapsed. And it became more and more of an algorithmic war that went on between the algorithmic world vying for the shrinking space between the bid and the ask in the equity market until practically that spread literally collapsed. And I had, in the year 2003, I had as many as 14 different algorithms that ran without any human intervention, supplying bids and offers in specific equities, making the market, that's called making the market. And I was vying for fractions of a penny, but my algorithms would trade over 1 billion times a month. Now, it's impossible for me to trade 1 billion times a month. Now, I believe that we're going to move to a world very similar to that as we rely more and more on AI and algorithms to do things in our almost in our daily lives, in our work, that we're incapable of doing because some of these activities require literally billions and billions of transactions. Now, let me give you a scenario under which an algorithm or an AI will likely demand Bitcoin for its services. So let's say, for instance, I create a specific AI-generated algorithmic process that gets a specific job done over 14 different steps. So this algorithmic-driven AI does these 14 different steps, but does them billions upon billions upon billions of times per month. My AI at steps 6 and 9 require the functionality from 2 other AI processes. So in order for my algorithmic generated AI to complete its 14 steps, it requires 2 other AI processes in steps 6 and step 9 to complete my 14. These other 2 AI processes will be paid. AI right now, if you were to ask it, knows what's the soundest money on earth. An AI can't receive dollars. An AI can't open up a bank account at JP Morgan Chase. An AI is going to demand Satoshis. Now, what's also interesting is that with Bitcoin, which is infinitely divisible, an AI can be paid for each one of those processes in billions of processes. So if this AI does this process 4 billion times in a month, its price for that process can actually be divided by 4 billion pieces. So you can't take a penny and divide 1 cent into 1 billion slices, but you can do that with Bitcoin. And so when more and more of our processes move to the digital world, I believe that digital world will start to demand Bitcoin for its processes. So imagine each AI-generated process also having its own wallet. And the processes can be built into this AI 14-step process where if the AI needs the services of another AI, it can literally, it's built into the code to literally open up an account with that other AI process and set up the streaming back and forth between Satoshis. And I see this world quite clearly coming upon us quite rapidly because I actually lived this world. I lived the world and I participated in the world with 14 algorithmic trading processes of my own, which I ran for 8 years straight. It did extraordinarily well until the big guys came in and squeezed the smaller firms out of that space. But AI is going to not demand a declining fiat currency. It is not going to demand a form of payment that cannot be divided 1 billion or even 1 trillion times. It is not going to choose a form of payment that is not digital like itself. And so I want you to think about this. I want you to think about the fact that cost can now be divided infin, in infinitesimal pieces. Instead of it being a job cost, it can be a process cost. We can't do this as humans, but our AIs that are working for us, that we employ, that we create and employ, can certainly work for this. And I believe that this AI generated world that will be streaming sats back and forth between each other, they will create amongst themselves this ecosystem, this native ecosystem where those Satoshis never really leave that ecosystem. It's not like an AI is going to say, okay, I think my Satoshis are overbought, so I'm going to sell them out for dollars. Your AI is going to continue to generate Satoshis and continue to generate Satoshis. Now, of course, the owner of the AI, the developer of that AI process, might cash out the Satoshis. But I believe that we're going to move to this world. It happened in my space. I believe it's going to happen generally in almost every single space. And I want you to think about this. The digital world is very much akin to a new frontier. It is a newly discovered world, as worlds go. We have been exposed to the digital world, this digital reality, for what some might consider to be quite some time. But in the grand scheme of worlds, it's a very baby new world. We as human beings are starting to become a lot more comfortable living more and more incrementally in this world. And I mentioned this in one of my talks a week or so ago before. What I mentioned was the fact that, first of all, the digital realm is not a world or a realm or frontier that was created by man or human beings. Worlds cannot be created by individuals, by entities, or by living mechanisms. Worlds are, and worlds are perpetually discovered. The digital world, or this frontier, if you will, it's not an invention. It's a discovery. It has existed since the beginning of time. We, in our evolutionary process, have reached a point where we've discovered this brand new space called the digital realm that is now starting to suck the things that we're used to in our analog world into it. And all new worlds suck in the old world. So this new digital world, as I mentioned before, has sucked in our photos. I have more photos on this phone. I have over 50,000 images. They give me joy. I flip through them sometimes. I show them to others sometimes, and they are just as real to me as the 12 physical photo albums my mother used to keep under the coffee table. But we have far more digital photos that you can't really touch, feel, experience in the analog world. We can't put them, we can print them out, but in reality, they don't exist in a physical album. They don't even really truly exist on my phone, but they are not in the world that we have, before the digital world, have been accustomed to, right? And so the digital world is taking things from us. It is sucking photos into it. It has sucked our music into it. When's the last time you touched an album? When's the last time you held an album? When's the last time you purchased an album? I bet you can't even remember. Some of you can't even remember the CD days. So music, for instance, has been going through this process of being digitized for a very long time, going from live bands and live groups to listening to those groups now on plastic, vinyl, from vinyl to 8-track tapes, from 8-track tapes to cassette tapes, to cassette tapes to CDs, from CDs to files that we used to send back and forth. Remember Netscape? And later, streaming. And so today we don't touch, feel, or do anything with music. Yet music has become more ubiquitous today than it's ever been in the entire human experience. Movies are more ubiquitous today. I have access to literally hundreds of thousands of digital movies. I can't touch the movies. I can't hold them like I used to, run down to Blockbuster and get the 14 copies that my Blockbuster store was going to get of the new release. All right. Those days are over. So movies are not touched anymore. Music is not touched anymore. For the most part, our photos are not touched anymore. When's the last time you licked an envelope, this disgusting glue on the back of an envelope, and selected your perforated stamps and licked those and put the right amount of stamps on your envelope to mail them to London or cross country or to a different state to a relative? You can't even remember the last time you did that. And most of you probably have never done that in your lives. So our mail and for our form of communication has gone almost completely digital. In addition to our music, our photos, our movies. And there are scores of examples of this new world that is not part of the analog world. This new world, there are plenty of examples of this new world sucking our analog items into it. And it is a billion-year story that every new world consumes all of former worlds into it. And so, with that being said, the digital world is the new frontier. It started largely with computers, and then computers to the internet, and now Bitcoin. And one of the issues that the start of this digital revolution or evolution, depending upon your point of view, right? The problem with it until Bitcoin came into existence was that it did not have a native currency. It did not have a native form of money. And another problem that it had is that that scarcity had not yet been discovered in this brand new frontier. So we're entering into this new digital frontier, but we can't find scarcity like we have in the analog world until boom, Bitcoin comes into existence and there it is. Scarcity exists here. And so once scarcity can be found in a new world, that is what is sought for and sought in every world. Once scarcity is found, then there is value found as well. Scarcity is almost inextricably intertwined with the concept of value. All right? No one values the thing that everyone has. You only value what is not commonly had or is what is very difficult to have. So I always tell my traders this: if every single person on the planet traded well and they asked you, what do you do? And you said, I'm a trader. No one would be impressed. Oh, my grandmother's a trader too. Like, what is that? No one values what everyone can do. No one values what everyone can have. And so our first entry into this brand new frontier, the digital world, we couldn't find scarcity. All we saw was a world that could just infinitely be copied and shared. Music could infinitely be copied and shared. Information could be infinitely copied and shared. Photos could be infinitely copied and shared. Movies could be infinitely copied and shared, where was the scarcity? Where were the limits applied to specific things? And Bitcoin brought that, it didn't bring that into existence. Bitcoin revealed that scarcity does exist in this new world. And I'm constantly harping on this point. Many people, in my opinion, erroneously think that I am harping on semantics here, but I do not think it's semantics. I am a stickler for saying that Bitcoin is not an invention, that it is a discovery. It is the mechanism that allowed us to discover digital scarcity. Now, we've never had in the analog world, we've never had finite scarcity. We've had almost a pseudo scarcity in our prior world. We never had a true scarcity. So our scarcity in the analog world was a scarcity that was imposed on something through physical restraints. So let me explain that for a second here, right? If I'm incapable of reaching the top shelf where there are some desirable items up there, but I can't reach it because I'm only a certain height. If I get someone taller, maybe they can reach it. But if it's just beyond even the tallest person, then the items on that shelf can be considered to be scarce. Why? Because few can reach them. That doesn't mean that the items on the shelf are actually finite in their scarcity. It just means that there is a pseudo scarcity. There is a forced scarcity because there's a limit on how far humans can reach. All right? If humans could reach there, they perhaps would find that it's infinite there. All right? What they desired was infinite there. So what we've had prior to the digital world, prior to Bitcoin bringing into existence or revealing that there is not only scarcity, but there's finite scarcity, meaning there's an absolute scarcity. What we had was not that. We never had finite scarcity. A lot of people say, well, gold is scarce, and that's where its value comes from. Its value is inextricably intertwined with its hardness. It's hard to produce more. It's hard to find more, I should say. It's hard to find more gold. It doesn't mean that gold is not infinite. It's just hard to get at it, all right? Because the gold that is closer to the surface, those top layers have all been mined, and the layers under those easy layers have been mined. So as the world has gotten better at mining deeper and deeper into the earth, all right, it's becoming harder and harder, which makes gold, or has made gold, scarce. Not because it's actually finite, not because it's actually scarce even. The scarcity is a pseudo-scarcity that is tied to the limits of our capability. That is not the case with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first thing human beings have come in contact with that is not only scarce, it is finite, which means that it can't be, there can't be more. We know what the supply is in advance, and it can't be more. That is finite. And because we've never had finiteness to our scarcity, it is hard for many of us to wrap our brains, wrap our hands around, wrap our minds around how enormous this is. We don't really even, I don't think that we're even capable of understanding what finiteness will bring to the human race. We know what scarcity, a false scarcity, brought to the human race and the value that it brought to human beings. But we have never had finite scarcity. And that is what Bitcoin is. But I do not believe that it's semantics to say, Oliver, it's the same, whether it's an invention or a discovery, it doesn't matter. No, it matters. It matters to get this point right, in my opinion, because there will be less of a chance to disrespect how amazing it is that how fortunate we are to live in a time where we're experiencing a brand new discovery for the human race. And discoveries are one-offs. They don't come very frequently. Discoveries that have this profound effect on the entire human species, you can count them basically on one hand, maybe two hands, but you know what I'm saying. They're few and far between over the millions of years. So one of those discoveries was fire. Wasn't that fire was invented at the time that someone first saw it, or rub two sticks together and the elements caused a combustion that brought it into being. But the profound effect that fire has had on the human race is stupefying, and it's still in its early form of adoption. And the discovery of fire is over 2 million years old. We are still finding ways to utilize the discovery of zero. The Pythagoreans, they did not invent the number zero. Yes, there were markers before the Pythagoreans that put empty spaces where a zero would go, but the actual discovery of this new digit revolutionized mathematics and changed the human race forever. We're still finding ways. Mathematicians, scientists are still finding innovative ways to utilize the discovery of the number zero. We're still finding ways to utilize. We haven't even begun to tap into the power and the usefulness of electricity. And what's electricity? How long ago was electricity discovered? 600 AD. And we're still in the infancy of utilizing all of electricity's capacity, its ability. We can't even imagine today how electricity is going to be used 100 years from now, 400 years from now. And Bitcoin is just under 15 years old. We are very fortunate to live in a time where we get to experience the brand new startup of a life after what I believe will be a life-changing, a human species-changing discovery. And Bitcoin is just under 15 years old. The digital world is upon us, and we may not have been very aware of the fact that our whole life we've seen this process of us being deeper and deeper, being pulled into this new world. We haven't really stopped to think that how many things used to exist in the analog world that now exist entirely in the digital world, right? We used to have fax machines. They're digital today. Most cameras are digital today. And I remember watching movies with long distance operators. You know, the movies where there's a room full of ladies and switchboards putting wires in a wall. There's tens of millions of electronic switches that have basically replaced the human being putting cables in a wall. So long distance operators are digital. So many things in our lives are digital. Our books are digital. I have over 1,000 books on this phone, right? More books than the library had that my mother worked at during my childhood. More books on my phone, that physical analog library. And so I believe that all payments obviously go digital, but what many, I think, are not even thinking about is the fact that not only is the human race growing in number and will forever grow, I don't care what the rhetoric is out there of declining population rates, blah, 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 blah. Trust me, the number of human beings will forever grow. It is estimated that by the year 2050, we go from 8 billion people on Earth to 10 billion people. And by the year 2100, it's several billion more, and on and on and on it will go. Now, if you think about this, more human beings make a finite asset more valuable, more scarce. All right. But what that's easily understood when you explain that. But what I think is being missed is that there's a new race in this world. We're being pulled into a new world where there are other beings that work, that do things, and that work with us, work for us, potentially, maybe potentially work against us, but also will demand pay. We're being AI, algorithmic processes. These are the new, not the new, I should say, but these are beings. Christopher Columbus was said to discover America, all right?
Yes.
And, but weren't there people there? Yes. People were there. A different type of people with different cultures and different ways and of looking at life and living differently, believing differently. But there were people there. We are now entering this digital world, and there are people there. There's AI entities there. There are algorithmic entities there that do things without our human intervention. They have different cultures. They think differently. They do things differently. They believe differently. And these beings don't want an analog rock. They don't want a man-made item. Ask any AI whether fiat currencies are sound. They'll give you the answer. They know more than you. Ask AI, they're going to know that Bitcoin is a sounder form of money. They know that no human being can control it. They're not going to want payment from any money that can be controlled by someone else.
Whether fiat
all right,
currencies are sound.
And they have all information available in the analog world to them. So in many respects, these beings in this world are smarter. We will harness some of that. We will join forces with some of that. They will help us. We will help them. But I think this is being missed. And I know it sounds rather Star Trek-y, but, art oftentimes is a precursor of real life and reality. And I believe that Star Trek and some of those older shows were sort of pointing to the way to where we were going, either unconsciously and some might argue even consciously. But anyway, guys, I do see the live stream here, but I don't, let me see if I open this up. I don't see any comments though. I don't know where. I did when I set this up, I made sure that I set it up where everyone could comment. I do see some likes and I see 2 shares on this. But anyway, that's something that I wanted to I wanted to add a little bit more nuance to that comment, because a few people commented on that post that says, that's interesting. Can you elaborate on that? And so that's where I see things going, guys. I see more and more of our lives being sucked into this digital world. And I think it's being missed by a lot of people, because when I tell a person today that most of your friends are digital, and they're like, what, Oliver? No, come on, seriously. And I'm like, that's very true. you probably have more digital friends than you have analog friends. And I say analog friends by what you would consider to be real human being friends. And I guarantee you that you communicate more frequently with your digital friends, that in some respects you have more respect for some of them than you have for some of your very, very own family members. I believe that some of them you might admire. I mean, some of them you might hate, of course. But they're all digital. I have some of my richest experiences are with people that I've never met before, that I'm with virtually every single day in my day-to-day goings on. But I have deeper and richer experiences with many of them over the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years. I've never met them physically in the analog world, but they're my digital family. They're my digital friends. And so, I don't have to tell anyone listening to this now that the internet changed the way human beings do virtually everything. And one small little baby view of Bitcoin is that it's not the money of the internet. It is the internet of money. Very different. It's not the money for the internet. It's the internet of money. And so what the internet accomplished was stupefying. Why is that? But it's not the money of it. While it collapsed almost everything into this digital world, money didn't and was incapable of collapsing value. It was incapable of collapsing into itself money, stored human time. And Bitcoin has come, or one way to look at it is that Bitcoin is the next stage of that collapsing into this digital world, where it is now tackling the biggest thing that exists in the analog world, and arguably one of the most important things, which is how human beings store their excess, how human beings store their value. All right. And guys, I grew up in a very religious home, and I grew up in a home in which I heard very frequently that money's not everything. And it's not something that often that very much resonated with me. From a very young age, I was after the money. But I'm very glad that it never resonated with me, because money is, not only is money important, money is arguably the most important thing to a human being, because money represents you. Money represents the totality of who you are, what you are. And many people don't pause for a moment to think about what the money represents. It's a symbol that represents your time, which is the stuff your life is made up of. So your life is made up of time, and you give that time to someone or to something, some cause, and in exchange for that time, you receive something in exchange for that. That something is money, okay? When what you receive for your time, your energy, your effort, your life, your talent, your education, your skill, the information you have, all of that you give, and someone says here in exchange for you giving it to them, okay? And that thing is money. Now, when you utilize that money to exist, you may have something left over that you don't want to use now, but you want to store that for later. Now, what that stored portion, that excess portion represents, is a percentage of your life. You gave it. It's the time you can't ever get back. Your life is made up of it. And it's now stored in this little piece of paper, or it's stored in this account held by someone, but that's your life. And so how can money not be important if it represents the life you gave? It's just a symbol of the life you gave. And when you disrespect that, you disrespect your very own life. And this is why you'll always see where people disrespect money, they're almost always in need of it. People who disrespect money are almost always poor. The people who respect money tend not to be, because they're respecting their very own lives. And so this money, this stored money, is your stored life, is your stored time. When someone is, and when you give your stored life to someone and say, you keep my life for me, what history has shown is that the person you give your life to, hold this and protect my life for me, protect my future for me, that history has proven over and over and over again, the person you give it to, the person you give your life to, that stored time, that stored life of yours, they always fuck it up. They always ruin it. They always lose it. They always steal it. They always debase it, make it less. And so for the first time, we had something in this brand new digital realm, this new frontier that we're becoming more and more comfortable living in. We now can say, you know what? I don't need another man to protect my life anymore. I don't need to hand over my life to another human being anymore. That I have something that I am in full control over, that no other human being can touch, take, debase, steal, or ruin, or fuck up on me. That is what Bitcoin does for the human race. And I believe that these are only the small little things that we can see. When the internet first came into existence, it was largely looked at just like, okay, it's a form of chat, a way for me to chat with someone across the country. That's pretty cool. We, in 1995, could never imagine 1996, all of the use cases for money. We thought it was just chat. Then we thought, okay, cool, there's voice over IP. Now I can speak over it. Oh, I can send things back and forth to my friends too over it. Oh, that's pretty cool. And it just kept growing, but no one in 1995, 1996 could even imagine that it would change virtually every single corner of our lives. And so right now, money is the first use case of Bitcoin. I think that we can't even imagine the use cases for something that is finite, that is accessible to every human being on earth, but yet is not controlled or manipulated by any human being on earth. We've never had something like that. We've never had something that human beings can't control. Never. We've never had something that human beings can't manipulate. Never. For the first time, there's something that runs without human intervention, that is accessible to every human being, but yet is not controlled by any human being. Something that can be trusted because it's math. Math does, by the way, live in the digital realm. And so I think that I think that we are truly underestimating where this will be in 20 years, the same way we underestimated where the internet would be in 20 years. I think that we can't even imagine what Bitcoin is going to be used for. Right now, we see it as money. I think that's its first use case. It's the biggest one in the analog world, but there are millions of other use cases that we'll discover that Bitcoin is useful for in the future, the same way we did with the internet. So guys, look, I apologize for, I see 700 views here. That's pretty cool. I have no idea how to see your comments. I'll try to figure that out. But just wanted to pop in and sort of like do this test, but also wanted to add some flavor, some nuance, and some depth to my AI comments. So I hope I didn't disturb you. I know it's somewhat of a surprise, but I do want to say this, guys. Um, I believe that I know that Bitcoin is um, in April of 2024, Bitcoin will become the hardest money man has ever known. And hard meaning hard to produce, right? That's what hard money means. It's hard to produce it, right? 96% of it's already mined, which means that the only way that you're going to ever be able to gain access to Bitcoin is to deliver value to a Bitcoiner. Think about this. In the future, no, now, the only way you get Bitcoin is if another Bitcoiner sells it. Now, I don't think they're very smart for selling it right now, but that's the only way to get it. Unless you're a miner, you're not a miner, right? All right, I'm a miner, but you're not a miner. The only way, there are only two ways to get the 4% that's the 4% of Bitcoin that's left in existence, all right, is to get it from another Bitcoiner. And as people become more and more aware of the fact that this is the hardest money the world or humans have ever had, it's the scarcest thing on earth. It's the only first and only finite thing humans have come into existence with. It's being, we're going to start getting it being, we're going to start getting a brand new race of entities, AI and algorithms that compete with us for it. And they're not going to give it back to us. As this becomes more ubiquitous, this understanding becomes more ubiquitous, it's going to be more difficult to get a Bitcoiner to say, yeah, I'll take your dirty cash for it. All right, you've seen me post the images of the US dollar collapsing, and that's the best one. The best one's collapsing. Think about that. The best one we have in the world is collapsing. What? AI is not going to accept that. So the point is that each month, each year, do you understand? It is going to become more and more difficult to get a Bitcoiner to let it go. And it's the only way, unless you're a miner, and that's becoming increasingly more difficult. The only way is to deliver value to us. And I want you to take this and truly internalize it, because it will also lead to you realizing how elite you are today if you hold on to Bitcoin. That more and more difficult to get a Bitcoin. The world will have to come to you and deliver something so extraordinary, so amazing, for you to let this thing go. And increasingly, more and more people are going to be like that. They'll let it go, but it better be something amazing. They'll let it go, but it better be something shy of a miracle. They'll let it go, but you better make heaven and earth move. Do you understand? And so selling this right now, I think, is like selling the internet if you owned it in 1995. That's silly. It's silly. So anyway, you're elite. That's my final point. You're elite. But I do want you to understand that I appreciate your time. I appreciate all of those who listen here, who spend their time here, who engage here, who attend these live sessions, and even the recorded versions of them. It's something that I've been speaking for 30 years all over the world. And I have been very careful throughout my 3 decades of traveling the world, talking about financial freedoms. Been very careful not to disrespect that process, to understand that people have given up something to listen to me, to be here, that they can never get back. You can never get your time back. And it's something that I never take for granted. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for giving me your time, your most precious asset you have. 2 most precious things in the world, your time and Bitcoin, which happens to be time as well. So I hope, what I hope and promise is that every single time I'm here in front of you, or on a mic speaking to you, or on my keyboard typing to you, that I deliver something of value. That's what I attempt to do. I hope I've done that tonight. And if I haven't, I'll get better. I promise. All right, guys. Listen, ciao for now. I'm going to go have a cigar. And tomorrow's another day. All right. Dips are good. Dips are good. All right. Ciao for now. Boom.